Please note that in this show, you may hear graphic descriptions or language that may not be appropriate for everyone. Listener discretion advised. Welcome to Parentless Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Relaford. On the show, we're going to be speaking with others who have experienced the loss of one or both of their parents or their parental figures. As we heard in episode 12 with Luisa Velarde, being parentless is like an island, and I don't know how to swim. Thank you for being my life jacket.
I'm Jeff from Rise with Dad. Over the last couple of years, I've been exploring my own grief journey after the loss of my dad, and hopefully we can talk about some cool stuff today. So thanks again for having me on.
Awesome, Jeff. Thanks for being here. All right. Well, I like to start out with lovely Instagram connection. I like to note that because I didn't even realize that we had such a grief community out there. And now that I've started exploring, I've found so many people. So I found your account a while back and I kind of looked through it. And then I need men to be talking out about this. And so definitely knew that I wanted to have you on the show and talk about what you've been doing. So let's just get to the beginning. Who died for you? Who was your person?
So my father passed away. He fought a battle with cancer, and that was the start of all this for me. I do have to say that I had about a year's worth of warning and preparation, and as that time was getting closer, I had lots of thoughts about how important it was for me to try to remember. Absolutely no intention ever of being on a podcast or doing an Instagram or even starting a YouTube video. It was sometime about a year after my dad passed that, I just really value wisdom, and my dad was a very wise man. And I realized as I was going through my healing that I think there are other people who need to hear this. So, you hit on the men on the show, and that's not something that's typical with us. We don't share our feelings and talk about when we're sad. And I just got comfortable with it, honestly. And it made me heal a little easier, I guess, when I started realizing, like you said, that this grief community is really out here. And I'm so thankful for sites like yours and podcasts like yours and the various other accounts that are available, because it kind of shows that we all do go through similar things. So thanks again, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Let's just give a little preface here. So Jeff has got some carpet work going on in his house, and props to them. I don't hear them right now. Obviously, my dogs are going crazy right now. So whatever you hear, we're keeping it real and raw. So tell me, so your dad passed away from cancer. You had some warning. What day did he pass away?
So it was April 8th, 2019. He was 77 years old, actually just shy of his 78th birthday. His birthday was on the 7th of May. So maybe I can go into a little Parentless Podcast exclusive. You'll see me highlighting number 77 all the time on my Instagram, and I've given out little gifts to people who are the 77th subscriber on the YouTube channel, and same thing with the Instagram account, because that number is very special to me. And honestly, the reason that 77 is so special to me is not only because that was my dad's age when he passed away, but that was also his number that he used for racing. He used to race motorcycles, and all the photos of him on his motorcycle, I see the number 77. And to take it a little bit deeper, that was one of the last serious questions that I asked him before he passed away. And it was, why did you choose the number 77? And honestly, it goes so much further, because he was a railroader and worked on the railroad. And one of the first engines that he was ever on, the number was 7007. But when he started racing a motorcycle, he couldn't use 7007, so he chose 77. So honestly, it's kind of freaky to me how often I see the number 77 now, and how much it makes me think of him. It's like a nice little reminder. I have a Strava account as well, and I really enjoy running. And I've actually made a track this last week that looks like the number 7, and I just do 2 laps around it, and it's almost 2 miles. So, I mean, it's so mind blowing to me how little things like that can bring up a memory or make you think. So, there you go. I gave you a little exclusive. I was going to save that for a video one day, but maybe your listeners will hear it now and enjoy the story about it.
Good. And this is your first podcast as well. So I totally like firsts and exclusives. So thank you. And I wrote, you said his birthday was May 7th as well. So that's another 7. I really see numbers too. And that's really, really interesting to me. You never know. Your episode number might have a 7 in it by chance. Who knows?
And my mom and dad were actually married 57 years. So when he passed away. So.
And that's the same as his birthday, 5/7. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy, huh?
Speaking of your dad, what is your dad's name?
His name was Buck Vickers. His actual name was Clifton Edward Vickers, but everyone called him Buck since he was just a little buck, a young buck. So everybody knew him as Buck.
Do you have any part of your name that refers to him at all? Middle name or anything like that?
I don't know. So I'm the youngest of 3 sons, and my brothers are quite a bit older than me, more than 10 years older than me. And my oldest brother is actually named after my dad. So his name's Clifton. We call him Cleve. He's named after him. And then my middle brother is named after my grandfather. And I'm just Jeff. I was just brought in a little late. So
you gave us a little bit of a preview about, what Buck died of ultimately, but really just take me back to, you said you had a bit of a warning there. So take me back maybe to when you found out and then just go on through.
Gotcha. So the initial shock came, I was actually living in Italy, and my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And I'm sure with any separation from any member who's sick or diagnosed, there's an initial shock, and then there's a panic, and most of us can just get in the car and drive and be by their side. For me, I was 15 hours away via plane. So, having to coordinate air travel and getting back and going through all that just added a little bit more a complicated aspect to being able to get by his side. But honestly, I'm pretty thankful for the plane ride, because I was able to collect my thoughts and kind of build a little bit of strength as I was getting back to him and my mom, because you hear the word cancer or sick or anything that's potentially terminal, and I think all of our minds go south pretty quick, and we get anxious feelings. But I was able to kind of collect myself on the plane ride, and then getting home to see him. When people are sick, maybe they don't show it, and he was his same self in mind, and he just looked thinner to me, like he looked sick that way. But he smiled and hugged me and laughed and told me how he was going to fight and how we were going to make it through it, and put our hopes in the doctors and the treatments that they have now for cancer. So that was how it all began. And then just as with most folks who have cancer, there are ups and downs, and you have a whole lot of hope, and then there are bad days. And I'm thankful that I was able to get home with them and kind of set up some initial appointments with him and my mom, and go to a couple of them with him, and kind of see how he was responding and everything like that. But man, I got to tell you, when I had to leave, I was there for a couple weeks, and when I had to leave because I had to get back to work, that moment is a moment that I'll never forget, because the hug that we had, when you really don't know if you're going to see someone again. It gets pretty deep in the heart. And, I was able to see him again, and I was able to spend some time with him right before he passed. And my brothers and I and my mom were all around him, and he was surrounded by family when he passed. But, I'll never forget how tight that hug was, that last hug when I had to go back to Italy. And then, he fought for almost a year after that, and went through all of his ups and downs and trials and tribulations. And I did see him in between that year one more time before I came home when he was in the hospital the last time. I got a couple pictures of hanging a picture with him, and he's in the mirror, like giving me that look like I'm not hanging the picture correctly and all that kind of stuff. But, those memories, and as I process that stuff in the year after he passed away, those things, you can never take a moment for granted. You can never, forget how those conversations are important. And, leading up to when he passed, I was trying my hardest to think of every single thing that I could possibly ask him, or every single story. I have to give my mom a lot of credit, because I think my awareness with grief and death actually went back to when my grandmother passed away. And my mom is an amazing woman, and has given me probably more tools and skills than my dad ever did, because my mom was with me all the time. My dad was a railroader, so he was gone a lot. And I remember when my grandmother passed away, my mom told me that it gets scary when your parents leave, because you start realizing how close to death you are. And when my grandmother passed away, that was my mom's way of telling me to start thinking a little bit more, and I mean, I'm 45 years old now, and that was some 20 years ago that my grandmother passed away, but that always stuck in my head. So when my dad was diagnosed, that was kind of how my brain started working, was, how can I have the wisdom that he has? How can I be the kind of dad that he was to me, to my kids? I have two kids. I have older kids. My son's 23 and my daughter's 20. We're going to be we're going to be grandparents in July. I'm going to be a grandfather. So, my daughter's pregnant. So, I think when you're young and naive, you don't really take all of that into consideration, that everyone's not going to be here forever. So going back to what my mom said, when my dad got sick, I was almost obsessive with like how many questions I would ask him, or how things happened, or how I could just be a better man or dad. And I'm sure he got tired of hearing all my questions, and I would call him every time I was doing a project and try to get his advice and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, even up until, when I was sitting in the hospital with him the last time and I asked him about 77, that was just kind of my way of, it was my way of coping that I was going to be losing him. And I'm so thankful for it now. I think it took about a year after he passed for all of that stuff to actually start coming out in me. And I have a little notebook that I write all of my little memories and all of my little thoughts in, and all of that kind of stuff. And actually, primarily, when I started coming out with the grief discussion stuff, YouTube was going to be the only thing that I was going to do. I was going to just make a couple videos and see how it went, and really see if it helped me. Number one, I had a disadvantage because I'd never made a YouTube video before. I was just trying to wing it. But I had all of these thoughts and all of these memories that were really, really important to me. And I knew, like I said at the beginning, that it could be valuable information to someone, just a little bit of wisdom, a nugget here or a nugget there can help someone out tremendously. So I started putting the YouTube videos together, and, here we are. So good stuff.
Awesome. Is there one, in all of those questions that you asked him, you already told us about the 77. Is there anything else that just really sticks out to you that your dad really gave you as far as wisdom?
Yeah. I have so many questions. I have so many things written down in my notebook, and actually, after my grandmother passed away, we, as a family, my son, my daughter, my wife, and I, we convinced my mom and dad to do a living history. And we went and saw them, and we actually sat down on camera. This is back in the day when, like, I mean, it was probably, well, I would say it was probably about 10 years ago. We had these little handheld cameras, and cell phones were only like 1 megapixel and stuff like that. But we sat down and we just asked them the basic questions of life, you know, like, how did you get your name? Where were you born? You know, who was your family? All of that kind of stuff. But one of the things that, you know, I still I remember about that is picking up my dad's work ethic and figuring out that, you know, he and my mom came from very different backgrounds. My dad was in the country and my mom was more in the city and all of that. But my dad just had to work. I'm talking about work like to survive. They would go in fields after, you know, corn had been harvested and they would pick up the extra corn and sell it, you know. So I've got a video on YouTube that's talking about selling tomatoes, and that was one of the memories that, you know, I had in this, and I never asked him, you know, why he made me sell tomatoes. I just kind of knew that was our way of bonding over work, and it's probably one of my favorite memories because I learned so much from that, and it's very personal to me. Like I could tell you I sold tomatoes with my dad, and you just kind of look at it like, oh, that's no big deal. But the lessons that were learned with that, and we grew together, you know, through the hard work, and then he threw a little bit of fun in it with, you know, he had beehives and we had motorcycles, and we'd pick tomatoes and then we'd ride our motorcycles, and he'd work on his bees, and like it was crazy stuff, but it was our way of bonding, you know, and it was just really cool. So yeah, that was one of the good memories for sure.
So Buck the beekeeper, huh?
Buck the beekeeper. Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because I often think back that was his outlet. That was his YouTube before YouTube. That was his way to get away and kind of have a hobby that took his mind off of his job and all the craziness that we have going on in the world. And I remember how happy he was. He was just one of those guys that would go into the bees like without any type of stuff on or anything like that. He was just that comfortable with it. So he was awesome with it.
So it sounds like, I mean, he had a lot of, like you said, outlets and a lot of things to kind of keep him busy. And so I don't know about you personally, but just from the few videos that I've seen, and you've mentioned running, and, you know, your videos encompass you riding a bicycle all over. So I wonder, yeah, also if you got that from him too, is just have lots of things to keep you busy.
Possible. I'm not a kind of sit around kind of guy. I do like the chill days, but yeah, and riding the bike actually became my way of connecting with him after he passed, because I think, you know, when you think of the stages of grief and how everyone processes them differently, I can go back to, again, you know, the moment I realized that he was sick, I started grieving, and I was mad, and you know, I couldn't believe it, and all of that kind of stuff. And when I got back from that first trip with him, you know, getting set up with treatment and all that kind of stuff, I started really getting on my bike and just thinking and trying to process everything and understand how my life was going to change, I think, more than anything. And I found that through exercise, whether it was riding the bike or running, just having that alone time where I could, you know, be alone with my own thoughts and try to process it myself, made it a little bit easier for me. And, you know, there was a year riding that bike without a camera or, you know, really thinking of anything like this at all, before I even got comfortable, or even to have the courage to ask my wife if she thought I was weird, because that was something that I wanted to do, you know. And honestly, I had to ask my mom as well, because I don't want to cause anybody any pain on how I grieve, you know. So I definitely got permission from them. And then once my mom gave me like totally 2 thumbs up and said, you know, if it makes you feel better, Jeff, I'm going to support no matter what you do. And my wife has coached me along the way and all of that kind of stuff. But the fitness is what sparked it all, I think, because it kind of made me think of something else other than how bad I hate running or how bad I hate having some cardio. I could just get in a conversation with my dad and kind of figure out how I wanted to proceed with being a man without him, so.
And that's one of the questions that I hate that we have to ask this, but we know that it happens. And you just mentioned it. How do you feel like your life has changed with the death of your dad?
It's changed tremendously. I get cold chills even thinking about it right now because I'm probably still in a little bit of denial, although I know he's not here. I think that, through this outlet or the Instagram outlet, I'm definitely changed to be more thoughtful, I guess. I appreciate life definitely a lot more. I appreciate being a father a whole lot more. I think that the side of grief that I struggle with the most is really believing that he's gone. And I've had a couple pretty big moments in my life since he passed, and not being able to pick up the phone and call him, that's something that still kind of gets me in the heart and chest but I still have the conversations with him and I can still hear his voice and I know that he was proud of me and, all of that, not present aspect of death is the bad part, but I try to keep my hope alive with, my thoughts and my memories. And I know that he definitely wouldn't want me sitting around and being sad about it. He's a go do something and be good at it. That's one of his quotes that I'll never forget, kind of guy. And he didn't care what it was. He just wanted you to give your best and try your best, so life is definitely different. Sometimes I do feel like I'm a little weird because I think about it all the time, but in reality, I know that we all do think about those type of things when we lose someone that means so much to us because they hold such a special place in our heart. And actually, I was talking to my mom this morning, telling her that I was coming on your podcast, and she said, we're not ever going to forget him. And that's my goal with this whole process is to never forget my dad.
Hey there, welcome in. For Mother's Day and Father's Day of 2021, I would love to put a project together, but to do that, I will need your help. If you'd like to participate, here's what you can do. Call 623-396-6069 and leave a voicemail. It can be anonymous. And look, I am a mom, I work, and I just put in my resignation letter as my son's first grade teacher. So no worries, I will not be answering your call. All right, so if you've picked up the phone and called the number, the next step, obviously, is to leave that voicemail you've always been wanting to leave. Parentless Podcast was born out of the idea that we all have questions or something we'd like to tell our parent if we could just pick up the phone and call them one more time. Now, I can't promise that they'll get this message, but you can at least send a voicemail out to the universe for your dead or estranged parent. I believe this will be a powerful display of all of the feelings, questions, comments, I'm sorry's, thank yous, and everything that we might ever wish that we could tell them. If this appeals to you, please call or share with a friend that might find this helpful. Today's podcast spotlight falls on Grief Out Loud, a podcast by Dougy Center. What I like about Grief Out Loud is that it's kind of a mixed bag of things. You're going to have grief stories from widows, grief stories from children who've lost one or two parents, grief stories from parents who've lost children. So many grief stories, and this podcast has something for everybody. You can find Grief Out Loud on any major podcast platform. This is hosted by Jana DeCristofaro, and she works with it's produced by the Dougy Center for Grieving Children and Families in Portland, Oregon. The Dougy Center has lots of resources that you can find. That website is www.dougy.org. If you have a favorite grief-related podcast that you want to be in the spotlight, please let me know. I would love to share it with everybody else. Thanks.
When you do start asking yourself questions, and you made a comment on one of my posts, I don't remember which one it was, but when you start asking yourself those questions, you have to be ready for those answers. And sometimes I think through my year that I was processing everything, there were some things that I was scared of to even think about when you start wondering if he was ever upset with me and all that kind of stuff. Like, I try not to go that deep in my thoughts because there won't be an answer to that type of stuff, but when I got to a point when I could say to myself what I just said to you, I know he was proud of me, and I know that, he would want me to keep moving forward. I felt like I was ready in some way, shape, or form to express how sad I was about it, and I think that helped me out a whole bunch. So,
do you do anything to remember your dad? Have you done anything on his birthday, or what do you do to remember him on those special days?
I will, for sure. On his birthday, on May 7th, I actually started a tradition last year. Me and my brothers that day were always going to have a big old cheeseburger because he passed away of esophageal cancer. And one of the things that he would say to us, or he said to me, I'm not sure if he said it to my brothers or not, but he said, when I get well, I'm going to eat one of them big old cheeseburgers. And he would put his hands up like this. And it'd be like the ones that are this big and so big that you can't even take a full bite of it. So last year I started that tradition, and as kind of a way to, again, think of him and keep the memory alive and keep that thought in my head, because he said it to me numerous times. It wasn't just a one-time deal. Like, he would say it all the time. And he did actually get to the point where he could eat a cheeseburger with the chemo and treatment and everything like that. Yeah, that was something that definitely stood out to me.
I'm glad that he got to eat that cheeseburger. And then I have to know this. When you did this last year, did you take pictures of it? Did you do videos of it? Are you going to do that this year?
I think there might be a cheeseburger picture. All of this is still a little foggy to me because I was so terrible at social media when I first started doing it. I actually had to take a break from social media in 2016. I went almost 3 years without being on social media because I don't know, just how things in the world were going. I was getting upset with, friends putting political posts, and I was judging and all that kind of stuff. So I had not even touched Instagram. Like I said, I'd never made a YouTube video before. Looking back at some of the videos, I watched one, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, that's really bad. And I can't believe that, people supported me just based off the quality alone, but hopefully they're hanging with me just because of the thoughts or the ideas. But I know there's a cheeseburger picture somewhere that I think I posted on Instagram, maybe right out the gate. So this year for sure, we'll definitely have another one up there, and I'll have an American grill this year. So it'll be a lot different. It won't be an Italian grill. So it'll be a little easier to make a big cheeseburger.
Now I'm going to have to look up Italian grills. Didn't even realize there's a difference. But no, I think every year you totally have to take that cheeseburger picture and then compile them. I think that would just be amazing. You've mentioned Italy and an Italian grill. How many years were you over there and away from your dad?
I lived in Italy for 3 years. My family was actually with me while we were over there. It was my parents and brothers and rest of my family that were here back in the States. I would strongly encourage anyone who has the ability to travel to Europe because it was life-changing to see the rest of the world. I had never been out of the United States in my entire life, and we moved to Italy, and just the calmness and the stillness of another country that doesn't speak your language or doesn't have the same priorities as we think that are important. Life seemed so much easier when you're living like that. And, moving back to the States, we just moved back in September of 20 after COVID, or after they lifted a little bit of the travel with COVID. But that was the very first thing that my wife and I picked up was, gosh, we forgot about the hustle and bustle and just the hecticness of living in the States. So strongly encourage you guys. We were able to, travel to London and Croatia and Czech Republic and just see all of that kind of stuff. And I'm thankful for all the pictures that I took now, because those are kind of what generate the posts and the thoughts every day that I put on Instagram. As I look back, and like with the month of February, I tried to tailor my posts around confidence building, because that was one of the skills that my dad always gave me. I grew up wanting to be a pro baseball player, and my dad, I think, had that hope as well, but it didn't work out. And But with that being said, I learned a lot, and he kept my confidence going. Even as I'm, 40 years old, he was still building my confidence. So I tried to do that in February, and it actually was a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be, coming up with a thought every day on how to be confident. But I made it through it. Now I'm kind of just putting regular thoughts. I'm not going to keep with the theme because I challenged myself a little too much. But I think you and I had talked about, in March, I'm just trying to get people to share this information because, like I've said a couple of times, there's somebody who potentially needs to hear it, or maybe it's not, loss of a parent or a father that causes the challenges in life. But if I can give anybody any kind of inspiration or anything like that, it means the world to me because I know how much it helped me.
So many questions out of that. Okay, so what brought you back?
My job brought me back to the States. In Colorado, we've lived in Colorado for about 9 years. So Colorado is such a beautiful place that we love it here. My mom actually lives in Indiana, and actually I hope she's listening to this because we've been trying to convince her to come live with us in Colorado. Anybody out there, put a comment somewhere that tells my mom to come live with me in Colorado.
Living over there, did you speak Italian then?
Very little. I knew just enough that if I was in trouble, I knew I was in trouble. But we had some really, really good Italian friends who, ironically, my son met at the pizzeria by our house, and then we all just kind of connected, and they made the experience in Europe so much more enjoyable for us because obviously the language, number one, but then just the culture. They took us to places that we would have never explored as, just Americans living in Italy. Honestly, that's a little bit of the inspiration on the videos as well. Is there are so many things that are different in Italy that are just, I don't know, beautiful or captivating, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. That I actually started wearing the camera just to kind of record where we were at and see the things that and hope to never forget them. So being able to tie a little bit of story and dad wisdom on there, it definitely made it a lot cooler as far as I'm concerned. Our Italian friends, we're still in touch with them, and so grateful for the time that we spent with them because it definitely made the 3 years really, really cool.
Awesome. Yeah. And I did catch a video where you were naming the names of your Italian friends, and the bike ride that I saw, it was very, very beautiful. Now that we've been talking about your YouTube channel and your rides and everything, just tell me about your channel, what your Instagram is called. Tell me about all of that.
So everything that I'm doing on social media will be generated through Rides with Dad. I actually just started a blog on rideswithdad.com. I'm going to try to do a monthly summary, although time is the limiting factor with everything right now. When you come home from work and don't have time to sit down and actually collect thoughts or whatever. That's why the Instagram Rides with Dad is actually turned out to be the most fun for me, because I do think about my dad every morning, but I also can kind of put my own little spin on it and have my own original pictures or my own original thoughts. Of course, the YouTube channel is how it all began. I'm still really not that good at videos, but I'm trying to get a little bit better at them. I think my last video, as far as actual quality of the video, was a lot better than definitely the first one, where I was just doing an intro, trying to talk through what my plan and vision was. I think on that intro video, I may have sang a time or two. I don't know. It was just all weird stuff, like just trying to connect, The Instagram is probably my favorite thing. There's a Twitter account, Rides with Dad, as well, that I just basically cross post from Instagram. And then, hopefully everything will end up being on the blog someday, but that's kind of a work in progress right now.
So in February, you said you talked about confidence every day. And so what's happening for March? Why should everybody be checking you out in March?
I think in March, just the fact that, there are original thoughts on there that they can kind of build some daily motivation on. I'm going to really start focusing on doing the reels where I can try to put maybe not a daily thought, but I'm going to try to collect and connect the thoughts that I have in the morning with a short little video or just a little shout out. The social media side of this, I think we're not as good as being at being social on social media, and the encouragement that you can get. And you know, I've given a couple shout outs to some folks like Mod 360. Every single thing that I've put up, he likes, and I do the same for him. And we shoot each other messages of encouragement back and forth. And you know, he's an awesome supporter. And I've had a few other folks that just really kind of keep me going. You know, I don't have some major following. Like, I think I was looking at your Instagram page before. You have like 1,000 followers. I have like 100 followers. It's not, you know, it's not like I've got some huge following or anything like that yet, but I'm having fun at it, you know, and I think if for any other reason, I just want to connect with people. And if I can, again, share my story to give anyone any kind of inspiration or any type of connection, or to make them feel better about the day or the challenges that they have going on, that's my hope in all of this. I think it's kind of cliche for all of us who do social media and are trying to build any type of following. You know, I want to be an influencer, you know, all that kind of stuff. But truthfully, I mean, we all have the ability to influence every single day. And, you know, maybe you just like my pictures, or, you know, maybe you like the little saying that I put on the pictures, but if you like it, that's cool with me. I'm just grateful to be at this stage in my life where I feel comfortable talking about this kind of stuff. On the Instagram this month, if you share the post, I'm keeping tallies, because obviously anytime you like, comment, or share a post on social media, that's what these algorithms that share and push the content out to more people like. So when people do any of those, that's how I get the word out a little bit further. The thing I like about Instagram, or the Rides with Dad Instagram specifically, is I feel like it's more organic. It's kind of growing at its own pace, where like my Facebook page is my personal Facebook page. It has all my friends on it and all that kind of stuff. And I try to control who I let into that. But with my Rides with Dad, it's completely open. So I'm really just trying to get the word out. So if you share it during the month of March, I'm going to just kind of keep a little tick mark next to your name. And at the end of the month, I'm going to do something special. I haven't really figured it out yet. My second hobby is leather work. I love making wallets. I love doing all that kind of stuff. And those have been the things that I've sent out to the 77th subscriber on YouTube, and then the 77th subscriber on Instagram. I was able to also connect and get them a little wallet sent. But we just moved into this house. I don't really have all that stuff set up here just quite yet. Maybe I can, but I don't think I can by the end of the month. I probably couldn't bust out a wallet, and that'd be a pressure on myself that I didn't want to do. Instagram is my most active social media platform right now. I am a little hesitant on the last video because I think it's kind of pushing me into closure with this whole chapter. Season 1 was, you know, all the dad stuff and thinking about all of the things that I've written down in my little notebook. But I've got a beautiful last video already in the works, and it's at an absolutely stunning part of Italy that I mean, celebrities travel to and all of that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool, but I'm just a little slower right now because I don't know if I'm ready for it. So I'm kind of holding on to it to make it a little more special. Maybe I'll do it on his birthday. I don't know. It may be one of those things. So.
Yeah. Well, that'll be awesome to see however you put that together. You mentioned your leather work and your notebook that you have with questions and your running. Are those your coping mechanisms, would you say, or what coping mechanisms do you use?
I definitely think that those are coping mechanisms. You know, I'm huge on resilience as well. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Angela Duckworth. It's called Grit. It was popular a few years back. But you know, resilience and being in balance with myself and knowing myself through the mental side of all of these challenges, and of course the physical sides. My fitness with my coping mechanisms. The social side, definitely. That's why we're here talking. And then I also look at the spiritual side, but I don't look at the spiritual side as probably how most people interpret it. I look at it as, how is my spirit specifically? Am I feeling happy and motivated, or am I down and sad? And I really try to understand myself. I think that self-awareness is probably the king or queen of all coping mechanisms. If you know how you feel and you know that we all grieve and we all have our own stories and we all handle things differently. That's really the ultimate coping mechanism, is to know that you're okay. All of these things are outlets for me, I think, more than anything. And surprisingly, as I was looking through your question sheet that we talked about beforehand, you said if there was anything that triggered me or anything that, brought back memories, all of these things actually bring back memories for me. But, more specifically, I think when I read that question, I was like, holy cow, I had like a little mini flashback of like a shaving cream that my wife bought me for Christmas. I opened it up. I'd never used it before, and it smelled like my dad. And I actually couldn't use it for like a few weeks because it surprised me. And I'm always trying to be in control of my own thoughts. And when that thing came into my mind and, it smelled like my dad and it just made me think of him, I wasn't ready for it. So, but I had to teach myself that it was okay. And I use that shaving cream every single day now. And it kind of puts a little smile on my face when I catch a whiff and I think of him like that. I probably have a little alarm fatigue from it now. Like, it doesn't catch me off guard anymore because I think I'm ready for it. But yeah, so I think just like, sorry to prolong this stuff here, but just like, any other aspect of this whole journey that we all have with grief, I think the coping aspect is similar. We all cope in different ways, and we all come up with our own vision of how we should be now that we've lost someone significant is so individual,
Wow, that's a pretty big how we should be after we lose someone. That's a lot right there.
Deep, for sure.
We'll be right back.
If you have a story you'd like to share, please give me a call at 623-396-6069. You can leave a voicemail because I am busy and I will not be answering that phone call, so please don't worry about that. You can also send me a letter at parentlesspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for taking the time to stop in. If you'd like to support the show and have access to exclusive content, please visit www.patreon.com/parentlesspodcast.
So you've mentioned that you have kids, and this is one of the things you already also talked about is what's different about fatherhood now that your dad has passed away.
It's scary. It's so scary to me because I'm kind of the example, and both my kids have amazing memories of my dad and had some very quality years with him to know how much he influenced all of our lives. But I find myself really thinking through the advice that I give them now. Again, both my kids are adults. My son doesn't seek advice as much as my daughter does. And I really feel cynical of myself to make sure that I give the correct answer, or what I feel is the correct answer at the time. Not that I would ever give bad information, but I find myself thinking through it a lot more. And then I also do catch myself thinking like him, like how would my dad handle this situation? One of the funny stories that I still am processing in my head is I remember when we found out my son was going to be born, and I was scared to death. I was very young. I wasn't even 21 yet when my son was born. And I called my dad and told him, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm freaking out. Like, I don't even know how to change a diaper. I don't know anything about it, being a dad. And my dad just so calmly told me, he was like, son, it's not that hard. When he's hungry, he's going to cry. When he's dirty, he's going to cry. And really, for the first few years, that's all you got to worry about, and it was just one of those cool little dad, just snap me back into advice or snap me back into reality pieces of advice that I really try hard to do with my kids now. And I guess that's kind of the weird way to look at it, is I feel like I'm more responsible to be the wise old man now, as opposed to the fun dad who can dribble a basketball or something like that, so. I also, my daughter processes what I'm doing on this social media platform a lot different than my son does. My son has his own memories. My daughter has her own memories. And they're both very supportive of me. but just like I was telling you, getting permission from my mom was very important to me before I even started doing this. I also feel obligated to not go over the top on this stuff with them as well, because I don't want to force them into memories or anything like that, I would rather them kind of process all that stuff on their own as well. So, which is even more reason why I like the Instagram side, because, like they both know that those are my thoughts, and it's not, I'm structuring a video around a memory of my dad for them or anything like that.
So you told me that you talked to your dad. So when you do that, and is that when you're on a bike ride, did you say, and are you actually physically talking, or is this a conversation in your head, or how is that working?
When I first started doing it, it was met with a lot of tears. Honestly, that was how I did it. I got on the bike and, just told him I missed him and I hoped to hear him. I think sometimes I probably did talk out loud, because I was on my bike riding in the gravel roads of Italy and nobody was around, and I definitely sang. There was a song, it's actually by the White Buffalo, but a remake of an older song that my dad used to sing all the time. It was The Highwayman, and it was just something that every single time on my workout or on my ride, I would get to that song and it would automatically make me think of him. And I could totally hear him singing the song. I could hear him whistling the song. It was unbelievable, honestly, how vivid in my mind and how real it seemed. And I always just felt like that was the connection. And I think that, I chased that all the time when I first started riding the bike. Now, almost 2 years into it, I just kind of, I guess, process thoughts and reassure myself that I know he's watching me. Like we already talked about the 77 number, that stuff will show up all the time and definitely, give me a gentle reminder that he's around in some way. I'll order something at a restaurant and it'll be 77 at the end, or, and I'll just be like, okay, cool, you're here. That makes me happy. So, but then selfishly, I don't know how to not think that way, because he was such a important part of my life, so I think I'm always going to do that. I think carrying the conversations was normal with me, because I've been away since I was basically 18 years old. And that was kind of what got me through a lot of stuff. So, other than the sad side of after he was actually gone and I knew that I couldn't actually have a follow-up conversation with him or really, tell him that, the advice he gave me on the project that I was doing really helped or whatever that was, I definitely still process all the same thoughts and carry the conversations on.
Okay. And with that, is there anything that you would say to him today, if you could?
Wow. No, I really think that I would say the same things that I always said to him, and that was that I loved him, and, I'm just trying to be a good man, and I know that he taught me a lot on how to be a good man, and, I'm thankful for everything that he taught me.
And you mentioned, that he's watching over you, and with the numbers that you feel he's there. And before you talked about, spirituality are you religious in any way?
I'm religious in my own way. Yeah, for sure. Religion, I was saved and baptized. I'm not a church goer, but I definitely believe in God, and I've got, my own values when it comes to what I think is important with religion. Honestly, my parents never pushed religion on us. They never, they kind of had the same approach that I have right now, even with my kids. If we chose to go to church, that was cool. If we didn't choose to go to church, we weren't bad people. We definitely were supported in any decision that we wanted to have. But it's always times where tragedy strikes or you have something that changes your perception to where either you really believe more in religion or you wonder about religion. And I can tell you through this whole process of grief that I have become more spiritual in my own thinking and praying and thought process. So I pray all the time for strength, because I think that we all need strength to make it through some of the things that we're going into, you know.
Mm-hmm. And previously you mentioned about hope, that you keep your hope. And just recently I saw it was the mental health pyramid, and hope was at the very top. And self-care and sleeping and all of that stuff was like near the bottom. Coping mechanisms, all of that stuff was near the bottom. And that was just so, to see it in that picture for me was really interesting, because, you know, I ask about all of these things, but we hardly ever talk about hope.
My daughter's middle name is Hope.
Is it? Nice. Well, you're always keeping that hope.
So, I'm a pretty hopeful person. I've always believed in hope. And I think that, you know, hope will push you to places that you've never been before, because you could hope that you're going to be a better person and just chase that dream for sure.
Yeah, that is very good. Have you ever been to counseling or therapy?
I have. So there was a time where right after my dad was diagnosed, and I told you that I had to leave and move back to Italy, or go back to Italy where my family was. We just had a really weird chain of events. And I think that I had a situation that happened that I was trying to pick up some, I don't know, like I was trying to protect my dad from being ill or struck by the tragedy of cancer. And I think the easiest way to put it is we had a plane that actually went down in a field right behind our house when we lived in Italy. And my son and I actually were the first people to get to the plane that went down. And we thought we did well. I know this is the craziest story ever, but you know, we tried to render first aid and everything like that, and we thought that we helped the gentleman, but he ended up passing away. And I couldn't get over the sadness that I was feeling from that situation, and I actually did go talk to the therapist about it. Went through a few sessions, and she basically explained to me that, you know, that was my hope, that I was going to be helping my dad, and that's why I was feeling sad, and all of that kind of stuff that goes along with all those emotions that we don't even know how to process, and all that kind of stuff. It was a scary time for me, not for my own safety or anything like that, but I'd never felt sad like that before. And, you know, just kind of, I knew that I needed to talk to somebody, and that's what I did. So that definitely got tied into my dad, even though at that time I didn't necessarily know that was what was going on. So therapy is definitely an awesome thing. Helped me out a lot, for sure.
Is there anything that you've learned now that you would tell Jeff, who is fresh in grief? Anything that you could look back and say?
I think the thing that I would tell myself is that you're going to be okay. You know, because there's a lot of times that I was really scared. There's a lot of times that I didn't know what I was going through or what I was processing, and I didn't know if it was normal. I didn't know if I was weird. I didn't know what was going on. And again, you know, knowing that I'm going to be okay and everything's going to work out is something that is important to hear and is important to feel, for sure. So.
Yeah, when things happen, it is very questionable as to whether we will be okay and we will get through it. But you know, somehow we end up coming out the other side.
The therapy question actually made me think. One of the things that was important to me to say to you, and we never even got a chance to say this, is, you know, I'm not an expert at this stuff. I'm living my life, and I think there's a certain age that we all hit, and maybe it's not even age related, but self-awareness and wisdom becomes more important to you. And I think that when you can start kind of digging into those thoughts and those processes and self-awareness, you've referenced that quite a few times. And I'm so huge on self-awareness that I don't know, it's almost weird to me on how obsessive I am about it, but I really want to be in touch with my emotions. I really want to be in touch with my thoughts. Because I think that that has helped me a lot through this whole process. You know, I can't ask my wife if it's okay for me to feel sad. You know, she doesn't know what's going on inside me, but having the self-awareness to at least realize that I'm sad has helped me out more than anything.
So when you have that self-awareness and you realize, oh, I'm sad, I'm having a sad day today, how do you communicate that to your wife?
I really don't need to. I think she knows. And I think we've been married for 26 years this year. And, you know, we've been through some challenging things in our lives, and we're just both each other's support system. And I think that she can read me like a book and know when I'm happy, know when I'm sad. And we're just there for each other. You know, I don't have to tell her. I think I've gotten better at saying I'm sad, definitely. But she doesn't need to hear it from me to know that I am, because I'll just how I carry myself is different. So.
And she's a really great support system there for you, it sounds like, as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My wife and my mom and my kids have all been there. Definitely. We've been here for each other, you know, through the whole event. So, my wife's my ride or die. She's an awesome mom and even better wife. And for anyone who knows her, everyone loves her as a mom, and I love her as a wife. So it's pretty awesome.
That's cool. I like that. Do you listen to podcasts? Do you have anything that you would recommend to anyone?
You know, your podcast is the first podcast that I've actually listened to that's tailored around grief. One of the first people to contact me when I started doing all this stuff was Supportive Fathers. Cameron at Supportive Fathers. He has a whole support network that's tailored around fatherhood. I'm super duper grateful for him. I actually got to write a little blog post for him. That was one of the first things that I did, and it actually convinced me that this was real. You know, that I'm not just making YouTube videos or anything like that, but there's a whole network of people who can help. So I'm super thankful for him. He's actually getting into the YouTube realm as well now. But no, as far as podcasts, I think that yours is the first one that I've actually listened to.
Thanks for listening. And you sent me that article that you wrote, and that was very awesome as well. Very well written. Definitely appreciated that. So I'll put a link to that in the notes so that anybody that wants to can go check that out. As like a resource type thing, what else can people find on Supportive Fathers?
He's got a whole menu of things for young parents, for old parents or older parents, you know, dealing with your kids growing up and dealing with loss of a parent. It's a full blown father network basically that he's building up. So, you know, he's definitely very good at what he's doing right now as far as getting the information out and sharing information.
Good. I'll be glad to add that one there. Is there anything that we haven't gone over that you want to bring up?
I just really want to tell you thanks. I just actually looked at the time. We've been talking for like an hour and 6 minutes. It feels like, you know, there's so much more to talk about, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to sit down with you and more importantly, thank you for contacting me, because I'm grateful for the opportunity, and just want everybody to know that it's okay to talk about grief, right? Like we say that, but I really mean that, because if you try to bottle things up or if you try to not process things, then you could end up in a situation that could be worse than the situation that you're going through. So I just encourage people to tell their story and you know, learn about themselves.
Yeah. And if anybody feels like they need to reach out to you, would that be okay if they just sent you a message? Because I feel like you would just be
Absolutely.
More than happy to provide, you know, a little bit of pick me up and some support.
Sure. You know, I may not always know the answer or what they need, but I'll be more than happy to listen as much as I can.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just about the listening, and it being a stranger. Sometimes that helps as well. So,
Sure.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our time. I loved hearing about Buck People can check you out at Rides with Dad on Instagram and YouTube. And then I'll put the links to the other things that we've talked about as well. Appreciate you very much and your input with the grief community.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
You too. Take care, Jeff. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey there. Thanks for sticking with me to the very end. This is a special portion of the show that I am so excited to be able to include. Here's a great big thank you to the new Patreon members at patreon.com/parentlesspodcast. Antonia A., Grace C., and Ann S. Thank you all so much for your support of Parentless Podcast. You are very much appreciated. Parentless Podcast is recorded in Phoenix, Arizona. Find us on social media and most major podcast platforms. Music recorded by Colin the Coco and the Revolving Birds. Studio and editing provided by Back Home Media. I am your host, Stephanie Relaford.